Thank you, Your Honor, and the Prayer Breakfast Committee. I really appreciate being here and to get to share part of my story. I only have a few minutes, and I promised them that I would take my few minutes. So I just want to have a couple of things I want to say about me. I am a humble person. I'm not vain. And so I tried to explain that to my granddaughter about humility, and she says, yeah, it's more like humiliation. Because when I was, in 2017, I was voted the best sprinter in the world. Not the best athlete, but the best sprinter. And then I had to run in a Royal road race. But I didn't have to run it. I went to help. But I ended up helping a 5-year-old who was going to run the mile. And I thought, well, that'll be nothing. I mean, I'm a sprinter, but I can still go a mile. She left me in the dust. And it was really humiliating. But I'm a sprinter. I'm not a marathoner. So do that. I also would like to say I don't take anything personal. I don't hold any grudges, so anything I say, it's just because I remember. It's not that I hold grudges. So, especially for my family, remember that. And and I do kind of have a sarcastic sense of humor, so it's okay to laugh. So what I wanted to do was to share events that shaped my life as for my faith and prayer life. So I was going to go through the sort of each decade that I've kind of lived, and so I'm going to start with the 40s, and I know most of us in here weren't born yet, but as they said, I grew up on a farm, and we had no running water or electricity, but we did have an electric fence because my dad tamed wild horses, and I came to realize that fence was really for my siblings. I had 5 older siblings, to keep them out. And so what happened is, in the 40s, my brother's friend came to visit us, but what he did, he broke into the fence. But I should mention before that, my brothers and sisters did break into the barnyard too. And I, being the wonderful, nice sister that I was, I told my dad, and they got the strap. But he also gave me the strap for being a tattletale. Now, that wasn't fair. I don't remember that. And I think, after I thought about it for a while, maybe I didn't really get the strap, and that was his way of trying to save me from them. Because those brats, I mean my siblings, they took me down to the creek and left me there with a bed of snakes. And you guys don't remember that, but I do. So, but anyway, with this electric fence, my brother's friend broke in there, and he tried to lasso one of the horses, and he got his foot caught in the rope, and the horse dragged him down a hill and back, and by the time my dad got there to save him. But what I remember the most is my mom and my 3 aunts and my uncle on their knees in our farmyard praying for that young man. And when they brought him up, all he had was a broken arm with the weeds sticking out of it and some grass. And I remember that was the beginning of my faith. I mean, wow, that was a miracle that he wasn't killed, because so that was the 40s. So again, most of you weren't born. Probably I wasn't either. The 50s. By the 50s, we had moved to Rosetown because my mom had been ill. She needed oxygen, and she needed to be near a hospital. So on my 10th birthday, the boy next door, he was exactly 3 months older than me, born February 17th, and he gave me 3 green brooches, my favorite color, for my birthday. Okay, his mom bought them, but he gave those to me, and I lost them. And I prayed to God, please let me find those green brooches. It was so important. But I also should mention about him, 4 years later, he was walking down the street holding hands with a girl across town who was a year older than us, kind of cradle robber, because it should have been me, but that's okay. Anyway, those green brooches, I found them. I found them in the tall green grass in our front yard. And my faith, like, it's just just really bursting here. So down into the 60s, I'm in Weyburn. I'm nursing. My husband at the time was American in the U.S. Air Force. He was stationed overseas. And I needed milk. I had no money, and I needed milk. And I don't know, a lot of us are born now by the 50s. The stores would give you credit. You could go and get credit, and because I didn't have a credit card for sure. If there were credit cards, I didn't have one. But you could get credit, and my credit was used up. And I prayed to God, please just give me some courage to go and ask the storekeeper to get some milk. It was probably 40 cents at that time, but just for a bottle of milk, please. And I prayed about that, and a peace came over me, and I knew I had the courage to go and ask him to just give me a bottle of milk. And I put on my Sheldon Williams basketball jacket, and there in the pocket was a $10 bill. Like, to me, that was just amazing. My rent was $40, like $10, and that was just amazing. So there again, another shot of faith for me. And then in the 70s, I'm divorced now, back home in Regina, and I'm dating this handsome, charismatic man. He's just a wonderful person. And we're going to go out on a Thanksgiving weekend. On a Friday night, we're going to go out. He doesn't call me. Saturday, he doesn't call me. Well, I know why. He's a drunk. He's a weekend drunk, and that's why he doesn't call. But I'm not going to call him to see if he's okay, because I knew that one time he fell down the stairs. And so I'm so worried. Did he fall down the stairs? Do I dare go and check on him? Last time I did that, I found a woman there with him. So, because I had keys to his house, and because he worked a lot out of town, and so I would go to his house and check on the house. But I'm not going to do this. And so I prayed, Lord, help me forget this turkey. I don't need this. Just help me forget. I don't want to worry anymore about him falling down the stairs. He's a nice guy, but I don't need this. I really don't need this. And a peace came over me, that peace. And I knew I could go and say bye-bye, like it's going to be all right. Sunday night, he phones me, Monday night, because it was a weekend, long weekend. And he says, oh, Carol, when I drink this last drink, that's going to be my last drink. And I thought, oh, sure, but I don't care. But I didn't say that. I'm a nice person. I don't say those kind of things. So, and I thought, well, but tomorrow I'm going to be telling him that bye-bye. And with no hysterics, that you drink too much and that. Just, I'm free. You to go do what you want. The next morning, he phones me and he says, Carol, I'm going for treatment. Oh, sure. I don't care, but I didn't say that. But you go ahead. And so the long story about that is 7.5 years of his sobriety, we got married. So that was kind of another answer to prayer. I'd asked to just not worry about him anymore falling down the stairs, but instead I got a nice, handsome, charismatic man for my husband. So that was good. Then in the 80s, I'm now in the 80s, and my nephew, very close to my son, was in a very serious car accident. And if he lived, he was going to be a vegetable. But there was a lot of prayer going around for him, and I went to a Tuesday night prayer meeting, and the pastor's wife, I asked her to pray for him. And she prayed for him, and that peace came over me again, and I knew I got to get up to the hospital, because I was visiting every day. I got to get up to the hospital. You guys, get this prayer meeting over with. I didn't say that, because I'm a nice person. But I just, get it over with. I got to go, because he's up there waiting for me. I go up to the hospital. He's still out cold. He wasn't any different. But I knew that he was going to rise in wholeness. So then, about 3 years later, in 89, still in the 80s, he's home, but he's paralyzed on one side, and his long-term memory is good, but his short-term memory is not. And I'm heading home after visiting him, and I'm just mad. Like, what is this? You promised that he would get well and rise up, and why is this? And I'm whining and crying. And I heard a voice say, "Oh, you of little faith." And I made a decision at that point, in August of 1989, that there's no way anything, anybody, nothing, nada, is going to steal my joy. It was a struggle for a long time, but it was always in my mind, you're not stealing my joy. I don't care what, you're not stealing my joy. And I think the hardest thing, and I don't know why this is, I don't know if any of you get into road rage, but I found the hardest thing until, I didn't get into road rage because I took driver training. It was those other drivers that were no good. You drive with two hands on the wheel. And because I drove with two hands on the wheel, I never gave anybody the finger, and because I never knew how to, so. But by the time I was 70, I finally got it. I would be driving down the road, and there's that farmer that if you just put your signal lights on, I'd let you in. But I stopped that because I started thinking, ooh, maybe that was my pastor. Maybe it was my sister-in-law, maybe it was my neighbor. So, and I got to be a nice person, act that way. So that's one thing. Nobody's going to steal my joy. So 1992, and in the middle of the night, I got a call from my daughter in BC. Her husband had taken his life. I hung up from that phone call, and I could feel from the pit of my stomach hysteria rising out of the pit of my stomach, and I knew I was going to just scream, and all that came out of my mouth was Jesus, and that peace came over me again. And I knew that everything was going to be all right, and so I was able to go to BC and be with my daughter and her children and get through it. But the one thing we had to do was to go, they had separated because of his drug abuse, and we had to go clean up his apartment. And somebody had already done that, except there was a flyer on the floor about accepting Jesus, and the pastor said that he had accepted that. And then I remembered, 2 weeks before, I'd awakened in the middle of the night, and I said, Lord, what if some of these people, I have a prayer list. It used to be very short, but now all these family people got so many others, their in-laws, stepchildren, grandchildren, all that. It's very, very long now, and I pray that every morning when I ride my bicycle. So I said, Lord, what if someone on this prayer list hasn't accepted you and they die before? But then that's what I remembered. And I'll tell you about that in 92, when that peace came over me. That's never happened again, because that peace never left me. That's with me. I'm just so grateful, so thankful for that. Now to 2007, I've turned 65, and I will never say again that I don't look like it, because when I turned 50, I said to somebody, I don't look like it, and he said, oh no, I thought you were 60. So I don't care. Jerk. Anyway, when I turned 65, and we had our first track meet in Regina, and I broke the world record in the 200. The record was 30-something, and I ran it in 29, and I looked at the score sheet, and all I saw was 29. I went running around, oh, I broke the world record, I broke the world record. And then somebody from Saskatchewan says, what was the wind, Carol? The wind, it has to be under 2. So I slink back in humiliation to the score sheet to see what it was. 1.9, I had broken the record. Yeah, but it only, thanks, it only lasted 2 weeks. A gal from California took it away from me. So I went to New Brunswick for the Nationals, and then went to the United States for the just across the border into Maine for the U.S. Nationals. And I got to run against that gal from California. And I think it was one of the first times, well, it was probably second or third time because of other worlds, that I ran a heat. I won my heat, she won her heat. She won the races because she got better, but she got the lane 4 for the 200, and she won her heat. So I came back to Regina, and my dear friends that I work out with, they stayed with me to get me ready to go to Italy. And usually when I would go to a track meet, I would say, I'm going to do my personal best, my PB. That's my goal, to do my PB. And I said, no, I'm going for gold. Because you speak those things that be not as though they were. I'm going for gold. And I'd also watched someone on television, a swimmer who'd been injured, and she was talking to her pastor. And her pastor said, I saw your mouth moving. What were you saying? And she said, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I said, that's mine. I'm going to do it. I can do all things through Christ's strength. So I go to Italy, and that's a whole big story in itself. No one spoke English, and I'm not very good at finding my way and stuff. But the 100, I had to run that first, and I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I won that. I beat that gal from California. She'd been in a pentathlon before, so I think she was tired because I never did break her record, but that's okay. And I also did the same in the 200. And when I did that, it really made me cry, just from the fact that I had said, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, and it worked. So, but in the triple jump, I was rated 4th in the world going in there. She dropped out because she was tired, so that left me 3rd in the world. And I thought, okay, I can medal here. And I said, no, I'm going for gold. In my 3rd jump, I got the gold, and I jumped the furthest I'd ever jumped. And so, how's my time? I got a couple of minutes. 2013, I was in BC with my daughter. She had just gone through 2 bouts of cancer and had taken stem cell surgery and was cleared of her cancer. My granddaughter was celebrating her birthday in February and had news for us that she was going to be a mom. My daughter was going to be a grandmom, and I was going to be a great-grandma. And we were all excited. We did shopping and did all kinds of things. And I left there near the end of February, went to, in March, I was headed to Ontario for the indoor nationals, and first dropping off in Sudbury to see my other little granddaughter. And, but as I got on the plane, I went, you have to shut your phone off, and I was just about to shut my phone off, and I saw a message from my daughter. I've been to emergency, and can you call me, and I'll let you know what's going on. So I quickly phoned my husband, said, phone her, because I've got to shut my phone off. And I got to Toronto on the way to Sudbury, and he hadn't got hold of her, but I had a message from her. I've been to the doctor, and it looks like I've got TB, and I'm going to have to go to the hospital on Monday. So that was on a Saturday. I got in Sudbury, and I picked up my granddaughter. We went swimming, and the next morning we went swimming on Sunday morning, and there was a message when I got back from my husband to call him, so I called him. He said, Carol, she's gone. And this isn't possible. But the cancer had come back. But with that peace of God, I was able to go there and be with my grandchildren in BC and go through it. 1 year and 6 months later, my son had a construction company on Friday. He's not feeling well, and that was happening often. He'd been in a car accident about 20 years before, and one leg was shorter than the other because of his injury, and he was always sick about something, and I always thought it was his back. And I'd tell him to go to the doctor, and he wouldn't go to the doctor. So this Friday, I was driving him around to his construction sites, to 3 of his sites, and still encouraging him to go to the doctor. And Saturday, I guess he went out on his own. Sunday after church, I always called him because he didn't eat properly. And I said, what are you going to eat? And he says, can you make me some spaghetti? So I went home, made him some spaghetti, took it back to him, and did his dishes. And he also lived with his cousin, my nephew. And I did their dishes and left him resting on the couch. About 11:30 that night, my nephew phones and says, Auntie, he's gone. Like, what is that? Call the ambulance. Do what? No, Auntie, he's gone. So I go over there, and I'm talking to my son. The Bible says that you can raise the dead. I say, Lester, you wake up and come back here. And so Monday they did an autopsy, and Tuesday he's at the funeral home, and I go in there and I say, Lester, you have to wake up. Like, you got to wake up. We're going to have you cremated, and I don't know what that means. If you have no body, if you can come back, so you wake up and come back here. I go home. My niece comes over. She hadn't seen us yet, and she said, Auntie, I just came to give you a hug. But you know what? She says, I had a dream. I don't know if it was a dream or if it was real, but Lester came to me and he says, I'm not coming back. I like it up here. And I tell you, I just said, God, that's it. I'm going to trust you no matter what. No matter what, I'm going to trust you. I gave up. That's it. I'm just going to trust you. That was in September of 2014. In March of 2015, my husband's brother passed away on July the 1st while we were we went to Atlanta, Georgia, and we'd been there. We came back. My 62-year-old cousin passed away from cancer on July the 1st. We also found out that my 59-year-old nephew, my brother's son, had terminal bone cancer. My husband wasn't feeling well. He had fallen when we were in Atlanta, but he had just tripped over something at a park. But he still wasn't feeling well, so we'd been to the doctor, and the doctor had given him some medicine to help with his low blood cells. And so on September 5th, we had an event with the Rough Riders, the Played and Stayed Rough Riders, and my husband was supposed to take pictures, but he wasn't feeling well. So when I got home, I had to go to the banquet that night, and so I dropped him off at the emergency, and a friend stayed with him, took him home, and there's nothing really wrong, just keep taking your iron pills. And we went back to our doctor and said, like, what? You got to do something. He said, well, I've got tests ready for you, but go to emergency if you need to. And I go to emergency. I'm a nice person. I don't tell them like, are you crazy? They don't do anything there. But so September 12th, I took him back to the emergency, but this time I went loaded with all his symptoms. And they said, they took him in right away, which was different. And he had a really wonderful doctor. He came back and he says, do you want the good news first or the bad news? My husband said, oh, well, what's the good news? Well, you've got a blood clot on your lung, and we can clear that with blood thinners. And but the bad news is you've got pancreatic cancer. And my husband says, oh, well, doc, how many years I got? Weeks to months. 33 days later. But before that, the next day, my nephew passed away, age 59. On October 8th, my sister's husband passed away. He'd just left the hospital a few days before. And on October 15th, my dear husband went home to be with the Lord. But all I can say is I just thank God for the peace that passeth understanding. And my prayer for you is that you would have that peace like there's nothing like it. I don't understand it. I just have it. And I'm just so grateful. And the one prayer, or the one Bible verse, I think it's Peter, you must keep praying and not lose heart. So thank you so much, and God bless everybody.